Coming live to you from St. Augustine Beach, Florida, it's time for RecruiterCast Live. In today's talent landscape, you need to be one step ahead of your competition. Whether you're a recruiter, hiring manager, or candidate, this is the show for you. Join Dave Webb, lifelong entrepreneur, big data expert, and staffing aficionado, alongside recruiting industry vet John Purton, as they talk everything recruiting. Join our live stream now on Twitch or YouTube to interact with our panel. From entrepreneurial journeys to job descriptions to the tech that will help you land top talent, this is RecruiterCast. If you want to learn about the latest trends, then this is the show for you. Live every Thursday from 1 to 2 p.m. Eastern. You're listening to RecruiterCast Live. Now here's your hosts, Dave Webb and John Purton.
Hey, John, how you doing?
Hi, Dave Webb.
Welcome to RecruiterCast Live, episode 96, and this is our series finale.
Oh my goodness!
I know, it's very anti-dramatic.
Well, it makes perfect sense that we would call it this week. I mean, Tom Brady goes out, we got to go out right after. I mean, if the GOAT is gonna call it quits, how can we not?
I'm not gonna talk about that guy because, I don't think he's that good.
No, he's
I really don't.
Good.
All right,
Party of one.
What's he ever done?
I mean, look, of course he did good. Look at all the support he had. You know what I could have done with the same support that Tom Brady had? Probably better. I'm just saying.
Wow, that's a hot take, dude. That is a bold statement, and
we are trolling
way to go
on
out
the series finale today.
way to go out with a bang.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for listening. We're joined. I'm with my host, co-host John Purton today, and we have our special guest back for the second time, Mr. Ben Platt. How you doing?
Awesome. Nice to be here, guys.
Thanks for stopping by, and we got some really exciting stuff to talk about today. We're going to talk about work-life balance, or is it work-life integration? We will know very, very, very soon. Normally, I would tell you when we're going to stream again, but we're not. And so what I'm going to leave everybody with is a economics lesson. Everybody loves those.
Oh,
Ben is totally going to get this. You, I'm not so sure.
Well, use small words.
Okay.
And if you can do any kind of pie chart or illustration,
yep,
that helps me. I'm a visual learner.
Get your Google out.
Okay.
Google supply demand curve.
Okay.
Okay.
I got my Googles out.
All right. So here's what's going on. For the last 2.5 years,
Lots of supply over
we have
here.
supplied you with a hell of a lot of damn good content, and you have not demanded it. Therefore, we have an infinitely small value assigned, tangential to zero, actually, to what we do. And so to teach you all a lesson, we're decreasing supply to zero, therefore making demand infinitely large. And only when it stays infinitely large for a long period of time, and we're flooded with love mail about how much we're missed and how valuable our content is and how the recruiting world is definitely a worse place without us, then we will consider coming back on the air.
Wow. When you put it that way, I mean, that's just awesome.
I mean, it's kind of like the fourth Matrix.
Double check that on Google. Is that exactly how that's defined?
I actually tuned him out. I was like, I can't keep up with this.
I basically summarized the output of the algorithm for you.
Thank you.
Right?
Thank you.
I just shifted everything the other
actually,
direction.
it ties right into the conversation we're going to have today, actually.
Really?
Yeah, it does.
Tie it in.
Well, so I have this, we've been working on this theory, we're just exploring this theory, right?
Okay.
The fallacy of the work-life balance, right?
Okay.
I mean, I think when it comes to HR, it's probably been one of the most prominent things in the media for the last 20 years, probably, something like that. Maybe more. I don't know.
Okay.
But that there's this, that people just feel like they should have work-life balance and that it should be in balance all the time, which I think is not only difficult, but probably impossible, because we're human beings and we get focused on certain things, and that's what we're going to do for a while. And sometimes it's more work than life, and other times it's more life than work.
So people have a theory that the balance is a scale of two sides that should be in equilibrium at all times.
That should be in equilibrium, right? And I think that's relatively impossible. But it brings up this this notion of shedding,
Okay.
right? Which is basically the things that that aren't providing fulfillment in your life anymore, right?
Like this podcast.
Like this podcast, right? and you always are going through this this analysis in your life of trying to decide, what is providing me fulfillment, what is providing me joy, what isn't, and those things that aren't, it's time to shed.
Yeah.
This
shed
is
'em.
like that Japanese lady. What's her name? Marie Kondo. Like, hey, if this doesn't give you joy, get rid of it.
That's right.
Like that lady.
That's right.
Okay. All right.
You
don't know.
I'm not familiar, but I trust you.
Okay.
I don't think you have any reason to make that up.
No.
Okay. But no, it makes sense. Like you limited time, spend it on doing something that you like to do.
That's right.
I mean, that's the mantra of recruiting and staffing. That's how we get people to change jobs.
That's right.
When we're trying to recruit them and get them on a new placement.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I mean,
shouldn't be unfamiliar to our audience.
For employers who are in the job of hiring people, I mean, that's what they hear often from people they're interviewing, right? Why are you leaving the job you're in right now? Well, there was something about that person felt like they needed to shed.
Right.
A lot of times it's culture, right? Or
Right.
maybe it was the job that they were actually doing. They needed to move on or whatever it is.
Job changes, team changes,
Yeah,
company mission changes, all
Right.
kinds of variables.
exactly. So I think as time goes on, like I was having this conversation earlier this week with my business coach, a guy named Rolf Ingman I've worked with for like 20 years. And now for him, he's recently retired. So, mid 60s. At that stage of life, I mean, you're really focused on shedding. Like you shed your job, you're shedding lots of responsibilities. You're still taking on new responsibilities, taking care of family members, grandchildren, those sorts of things.
Right.
But those are the things that, purportedly are bringing you fulfillment and joy. And for Rolf, he's an analytical type, right? So, he's very focused on, like, it's a very intentional process to go through what is he doing, in life on a day-to-day basis. And is this thing providing me fulfillment or not? I was thinking about it. For me, I was having a beer with a buddy of mine the other night, and he said, "Do you watch the news?" I said, "No, I haven't watched the news in 20 years. I don't watch the news." Because one night I was watching the news, and I said to my wife, "This is bad news."
Yep.
Like, that's all that there is on the news is bad news. And I don't need this in my life. Like, if I want to find out what's going on in the world.
Ben's trolling right now.
I was just thinking that. I was like,
Actually, I believe him that he's telling the truth.
I believe that
but
too.
It's funny how the context of this story can change 20 years
Yeah.
down the road, right?
In what way?
If you watch the news, you would understand.
Oh,
because it's, yeah.
You're just like throwing out pieces of poisonous meat into an alligator pit, just seeing who will take a bite of it. Yeah, but we're not biting. Go ahead.
But for me, it was, that was shedding.
Yeah.
I just decided at that point, like, if I want to seek out the news, I'll seek out the news. If I want to know what's going on in the world, I'll seek it out and I'll go find it.
Fair
but I
enough.
don't need it to
Okay.
be fed to me every night at 6 o'clock, and especially when most of it doesn't actually impact me and it's just depressing.
Right.
So I don't want that in my life. I just shed that, and I spent my time with the kids. You know? So
Ben cut out clickbait before it was even cool.
Well,
That's
yeah.
what's that's
I mean,
what's
a
up.
lot of people
That's what's up.
recognize the difference between news and entertainment, and they say, I want news, so therefore I'm not going to watch entertainment. Right?
Right.
So,
they're kind of very similar now.
oh,
Indistinguishable
Yeah.
in many
Indistinguishable.
cases.
Yes.
Yes.
Indistinguishable.
I think they're very distinguishable, and I think most people don't know how to distinguish between two very obvious things.
That's true.
But
But you and I are
we've
enlightened.
shedded the news. Your buddy says, "Did you see the news?" And you said no.
No.
Okay.
Yeah. And then he proceeded to tell me about something ridiculous that he saw on the news that couldn't possibly be true, which is why I'm not watching the news, right?
Fair enough.
So, but going back into this whole concept of the work-life balance, I mean, it's something as an employer I've heard from people for many, many years. I'm looking for more work-life balance. And I think it's something, it's certainly something I respect, right? I don't want somebody to feel completely overwhelmed by the job to the point that they don't want to do it anymore. That doesn't serve me as an employer. That's no good, right?
Right.
And so there needs to be a balance to that. And I think last time I was on the show, I was sharing with you guys that in my career, there was this opportunity to go to South Africa.
Yep.
But in order to do that, I had to completely modify the way that I worked with clients and how, the whole business worked.
Right.
Because you can't just go away for a month, and miss meetings and, have everything grind to a halt. It can't grind to a halt. It has to keep going, right?
Yep.
And so I had to make modifications at that point in time to do that. And from a family perspective, it if we'd have been rigid about it, it was like, well, we can't go to South Africa because I have to work, right? And that wasn't a decision that we wanted to make. We wanted to go. We had that opportunity to go. So we had to make those changes to make that happen. And so that kind of began my process of, this, what I'm now calling living this integrated life. And from a broad level, I would describe it as this mixture of business and family and friends and hobbies and health maybe, or whatever it is, kind of all in one, right? Where you're kind of doing all of it all of the time. I mean, I would even argue this is one of those, right? Like, I mean, I could be sitting in front of a computer right now, cranking away at a tax return, but I'm going to put this under the umbrella of business. Sure. And it's friends. It's fun.
We're all smiling and having a good time.
I mean, given the fact that this is not monetarily, doing anything for anybody, it has to fall into the category of hobby.
Yes.
Right? So it's an activity.
Love talking to CPAs.
Amateur.
They know how to just categorize everything. It's great.
So
there's a new rule this year, and you can deduct hobbies.
Sweet.
And he's
the hobby loss rule is being changed. But I think it's like, these are the things, like when I was talking to Rolf about this earlier this week, he listed off work, family, faith, friends, community, health, finance, relatively important one, and activities and hobbies, right? Of these categories of things that people do, right? And, my observation on it is that I think from most people's perspective, if you're solely focused on just one of any of those, most people would probably consider you to be an idiot, right? I mean, like, I've known people who are just solely focused on work, and I look at them like, you're an idiot. Like, you're missing out on life,
right?
Likewise, if you are solely focused on your hobby and not finance, not family, not whatever, you're probably also an idiot, right? Or you're starving, or you're living under a bridge, if that's your hobby. So it's this mixture of all of those things and how to blend them together and do them all at the same time. And I think for a lot of people, like, maybe see it as unattainable, right? And it may be unattainable in the situation that they are currently in, right? But I think when they kind of wake up to the idea that this is a thing that could be attainable, and maybe this is part of this great renegotiation, as you termed it earlier, instead of the great resignation, people are rethinking how they want to live their life, what kind of work they want to do, what kind of culture they want to do that in, the fact that so many more people can work remotely, than ever before. And it just provides, for some really interesting opportunities. We interviewed a lady earlier this week, and, I said, how do you deal with anxiety and stress and, when the workload is heavy? She said, well, I've been known sometimes in the middle of the day, after a pretty tough call, to just go jump in the pool. Like, I have a pool in my backyard. I'm going to just take a minute and go jump in the pool and cool off and refresh and come back with a new attitude. And, if you're working in an office 9 to 5,
can't do that.
You can't do that.
That's a real problem.
Yeah, it is a real problem. But I think, like, for me, we touched on the bus, last time I was on the show. That was this whole idea that my wife and I both had. Actually, my wife had it first. She said, this was, Thanksgiving of 2020, we're going to buy a bus and we're going to convert it into an RV and we're going to travel around the country. And I said, I don't think I need a bus in my life right now. Like, that is not the thing that I need. And come January, I had a bus in my life.
Yep.
And we spent a few months converting it. And then we left in June of last year and came back in August. And so we spent 7 weeks on the road. And it was this combination of working and playing, a client call, a hike, go play with the dog, do a Zoom meeting, and then meeting super interesting entrepreneurs along the way too. I mean, that's who I work with, is entrepreneurs. So being able to meet these entrepreneurs when you travel the country, it's interesting because, like, in the news, right? Not that I watch it, but I've heard.
You hear things.
Yeah. And the news, you see all these the blue chip companies. You hear about Facebook and you hear about Twitter and Apple and whatever. But when you go across this country, you don't really see those companies. You see the mom and pop stores, that are in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and in, all these cool little towns across, this country. And to me, like, that's the richness of it, right? It's all these entrepreneurs who are passionate about this thing that they're doing, in delivering that service to this community. And, we happened to stop at a lot of breweries, and all of these were local breweries. None of them were, part of the Anheuser-Busch chain or whatever, and met really cool people who were also doing cool things, and that was to be able to do that and work, all at the same time, in my mind was like, this is a really rich experience,
Yeah.
And it didn't actually take a lot of money to do that. It just took a commitment, to go do that, which is hard. I don't know a lot of people who've done it. And, but as we were going around the country, I heard a lot of people say, oh my gosh, I wish I could do that. That would be so amazing if I could do that.
Yep.
Right.
It's like, oh, actually
You can.
you just have to decide to do it, and you have to put the work in on the front end to make it happen. And then you can go do it.
So that's some thoughts on this. I'm going to jump back a little bit to what you said about a couple of things. I have like 3 very, very distinct events in my career, and I'd say the last 10 years, where I said, I don't care what everybody else says I can and can't do. This is what I'm going to do. And this is how like it changed things, right? And so what I want people to know is like, you can make a change. You just have to do it.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't do it recklessly. Like you can't just decide to be a skydiver without any training,
True.
right? But
Well, you can do that once.
Yeah. Same with some of these other things, right? But yeah, I mean, plan it, but like set the goal, and it might not be as fast as somebody else could do it, but one of the things was moving to St. Augustine from Jacksonville. Like I had a job in Jacksonville when I moved down here, but we decided that it might be a little bit longer of a drive distance wise, but it wasn't that much longer time wise. Right. And then at the end of the day, when we got home, we were at the beach in a place that at the time didn't have bad traffic, with a different culture, a different feel with our neighbors that we didn't experience in a different place. And so doing that was one of those things. And then for about 4 or 5 years, I still drove to Jacksonville. And then I remember I was working up at VistaCon, and it was almost summer, and it actually wasn't. It was like Christmas time, and I told my boss, or I actually asked. I was very nice about it. I was like, "Hey, I really need, for 12 weeks in the summer, I need to be able to work from home because my kid's not going to be in school, and I need to be there." Right? It's like. And she was like that age where she was like too old for daycare, but not old enough to be left home alone. You know what I'm talking about? Like,
yeah.
And even if you do like
Dangerous
day
times.
camp or something like that, like there's still a lot of stuff involved. And the guy said, yeah, sure. So I went out and I spent my own money on a special printer to print shipping labels. I bought some other stuff basically to duplicate my work environment. I didn't put any burden on the company at all.
Right.
And when it came time, I was like, hey, by Monday, I'm starting work from home. And he's like, yeah, I've changed my mind on that. And so I quit. And he didn't see that coming. But I don't know why.
Yeah.
Because I gave him a lot of runway to work with.
Right.
And like he made agreements with me. And so, like personal job wise. And so, by the way, when I did that, I never drove back to Jacksonville again for work.
Right.
I mean, that was like the beginning. That was the beginning of the end. So I was like, all right, new job requirement, 100% remote.
Yeah.
Now this is way before COVID. This is like 2011,
Right.
2013-ish, right? But we had been doing remote work in the IT industry since 1996. Like this was not new,
Right.
Telnet's been around for a long time. Unix has been around for a long time. So, anyway, the last one is kind of like the company direction related, right? We decided as a company, or I came up with the idea. I floated it by the management team, and everyone said, let's give that a try. At the beginning of last year, like, like, there's all of this pressure that you have to do X, Y, and Z to be a successful company, like based on the Y2K booms, big tech. And we're like, actually, we don't have to do any of those things.
Yeah.
We don't have to do an IPO.
We don't have investors.
We don't have to grow at 75% year over year and make $1 billion.
Right.
Like we all have jobs. Like let's not kill ourselves and have fun.
Right.
And it's kind of like the same thing.
Yeah,
like
yeah,
you're saying,
absolutely.
let's not kill ourselves personally. And if the company has that culture, then you get the better. I mean, I'll let John speak to it, but I think his balance is a little bit different than it was a few years ago before he started here.
Yeah. So a couple of things. So, so with you, your 100% remote requirement made it very challenging as a recruiter to sell you to potential employers.
Yes.
But we did it.
You did it.
Because you're a boss. Anyway, I mean, no, seriously, you cannot imagine the look on hiring managers' faces. They would see his profile. They would see his work experience. When can we meet him? I'm like, never. He's never coming up here.
Yeah.
You're never going to actually see him. You're
Right.
going to hear about him. You're going to see a work product. You'll talk to him on the phone, but you'll never see this man. But we sold it a couple of times. But yeah, you know, when Dave and I were really working together and I was in the staffing industry, I would leave at 3:00 in the morning on Monday morning to drive to the airport, and I would fly to Atlanta, and I would leave Atlanta and I would fly to Boston, and then I'd be in Boston for 3 days, and then I'd go to DC for 2 days, and I would come home on Friday morning, Thursday night, depending on the schedule. And the company I worked for, they still wanted me in the office on Friday. And like, I finally had to revolt at one point and just, I was like, dude, I'm just never coming in to the office on Friday anymore. Yeah. And, you know, and there have been many opportunities over the last couple of years where companies, big ones with big, deep pockets have been like, hey, you want to get back on the road and do some staffing? And I'm like, dude, no way. Yeah. I'm home every night. I see my kids every single night. It's been so much better. I've actually got to see my son get taller than me, as opposed to just coming home one day and going, dude, you're 11?
Yeah.
What happened? Like, where did that go? So when you talk about work-life balance, I mean, work-life balance it's a trap, in my opinion. It's an HR trap to get you to be a more productive employee. It's not a work-life balance. It's a life-work balance, right? Like, we're not living to work. We work to live. Sure. That's the thing, right? So,
well,
I don't know.
And in my mind, it goes maybe one step further than that, right? In that, and maybe this isn't available to everybody, and I'm privileged, and I get all that, right? But a lot of this has been intentional on my part too, right? Mm-hmm. And that is that, you know, there's that old quote, I think maybe Confucius or somebody said, you know, if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right. And so there's the challenge, or the problem I have with this work-life fallacy is that they're two different things. Mm-hmm. Right. And because they're two different things, you should have balance between them. In my life, they're not two different things. They're all together.
Right.
Right. Like, I work with my wife. I work with my kids. You know, they're involved in our businesses. Mm-hmm. Last night we went out to dinner with a client and their kids, and it was a blast. You know, that wasn't work, and it wasn't just life. You know, it was the integration of those things. And I think the problem that I have with this work-life balance fallacy that's been around for all these years is that it's ingrained in people's heads that they have to be two different things. And that's what I would love to help people overcome, is this idea that they have to be separate. You know, so many people, you know, I mean, I think employers across the country, probably across the world, you know, have really started to focus a lot more on culture than they ever have before. Right. And they're doing that because they want, you know, they know people I'm going to spend 8 hours a day here. I should enjoy what I'm doing. I should enjoy the people I'm doing it with. When I started my firm, you know, one of my number one rules was no bad apples, you know, because it's true. One bad apple ruins the culture. Right. Yep. So if you're a bad apple, you're out, you know, because we just want good people, period. Right. Because everybody else there needs that. You know, and I want people to be able to show up and enjoy what they're doing all day and not have it feel like work. You know, is it work? Are they being productive? Are clients being taken care of? Absolutely. But these are clients that they enjoy working with. Like, we don't want to work with, can I say assholes?
Yeah, you can say whatever you want. Yeah, it's all good.
Yeah, we don't want to work with assholes, right? Yeah. So, you know, that's one of the rules, you know.
Actually, there's a specific rule around this.
Okay.
It's that I can work with incompetent people, or I can work with assholes, but I can't work with incompetent assholes.
For sure. Yeah.
Right? An asshole superstar? Yeah, maybe.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe.
It's an IT saying.
But I mean, that's the point. You know, I mean, like, it has to be an enjoyable experience all day. And then, you know, if we can meet and have a beer as opposed to meeting in a conference room, that's better. We're going to cover the same ground. You know, last week, you know, I was lucky enough to be in a situation where, you know, 8 guys got together and we went and had a huge amount of fun, but it also happened to be the place where these two companies, we negotiated a merger between the two of them. Right. So it was this like perfect example in my mind of how you can integrate these things together. And, you know, I've had a lot of people tell me, you know, the story that you just did about not having to fly.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. You know, I mean, one of my friends, you know, was like, dude, last year I didn't fly, you know, like I just didn't fly. And he was a road warrior. I mean, you know, on the road all the time. You know, he said, last year I didn't fly. I played more golf than I ever have in my life. And I made more money than I ever have in my life. You know, like, I don't know how those things all connect, but I believe that they do. And I'm going to keep doing that.
There's something there.
Yeah.
I haven't flown since my last business trip, honestly. And it's been great. It's been awesome. Like, I hate flying.
Yeah.
My wife hates flying. My children hate flying. We hate people who fly.
Slow down.
Sorry. Just a lot of coffee.
There's a lot of planes in the air right now.
Got
lot of
a
coffee
little,
right
you
now.
just took it a little too far.
Took it that extra step.
I know what he's doing.
But it's totally true, though, man. I mean, like, it's so different. I mean, if you just even think about it just from a sheer time perspective, I mean, 3.5 hours a week times 52 weeks in a year, right? I mean, that's days that I'm missing with you know, my wife, my kids, all that kind of stuff. And you miss out on all kinds of things. You miss out on plays, soccer games. And even when you're there, you're not really there because you're getting ready to hit the road again in 48 hours.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I think the line's blurred with email, right? Or maybe phones that got email.
Yeah.
The BlackBerry.
Because it was so intrusive.
Yeah, because all of a sudden, and it was cool at first. It was like, oh, cool. If I get an important email,
I can be anywhere.
I'll get a jump start on it before 9:00 the next day.
Right.
And then it turned into abuse,
Right.
and then intrusive, and now it's to the point where I literally have a bag that is a Faraday cage that I put my phone in when I get home at night. So it doesn't even get the email. And if it did, it wouldn't ding. And if it did, I wouldn't answer it. Right?
But what that
you need
is
to call me, use the landline.
to me, you know, that's because of what your values are, right? Like when you're home, you have this value. You've made this decision that I don't want to spend time on that thing, right? And I think that, you know, that's the thing that really has to drive all of us and drive all of us as employers too, right? Is what are the values that we're going to decide are important? You know, if my value is you must work 20 hours a day and answer every single email that comes in, then I can't expect to have the people that work for me, you know, work for me for very long, right? That to me is a bad value system. If my value is, you know, take care of clients and make sure they're happy, whatever is involved in that, you know, you can create boundaries around all of that. You can turn your phone off at night, right? I mean, nobody expects you to reply to this email at 11 o'clock at night.
But you might think they do. And it really is a trap, right? I mean, I would recommend to people in job interviews to set the expectation that, like, hey, how many hours a week are you paying me for the salary? 40? Cool. So 5 o'clock, you know, you won't hear from me again until 9 o'clock the next day. Maybe the exception is I'm in IT and I'm on call a night or a week or so. But it's important to set that boundary up front with the employer so that you can not feel pressured to not put the boundary on or impose the boundary on yourself once you get home.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
So I'm curious how you manage it with your employees, right? And we don't necessarily have to get into policy discussion or any of that kind of stuff, but do you encourage them to, you know, unplug and kind of mix things together the way you do? Is this something that you talk to your employees about?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you know, from day one with our team, you know, we what I say is, you know, my expectation is that there's projects that need to get done.
Right.
Right. Yeah. And if you want to do them at 8 a.m. or 10 a.m. or 6 p.m. or midnight, you know, it doesn't really matter to me when they get done, as long as they get done. Right. Okay. So whatever you have to blend into all of that to make it work, you got to pick your kid up from school. You got to take your dog to the vet. You know, like whatever it is, it doesn't matter. You know, I know that you can do all of these things. And I think a big piece of it is the employee taking the responsibility for that too. Right. So it's one thing for the employer to say, I'm going to create this structure in which you can operate at your own discretion. The employee has to say, okay, I'm going to operate at my own discretion and get the job done. Right. And I certainly have, you know, people who are answering emails and Slack messages at 8, 9 o'clock at night, but that wasn't put on them by me. Right. I mean, that's just because that's when it made sense for them to do it. You know, at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, maybe they were in the pool, you know, I don't know. But I think, for us, like that is the value is, just deliver great client service. You kind of figure out on your own. You're all professionals. Everybody's paid well. You figure out how to make that happen. And that's what we can hold you accountable to, right? Because we're going to know in the end if it's not happening.
Right.
There's this kind of like paradox that happens with my one-on-one meetings with my management team, and I have them every 3 weeks. And I think at first, maybe I got the idea that the reason why people did them was to make sure that things were getting done. But what I found is, like, most of the time, I start off the meeting with saying, "Hey, this is your time. What's on your mind? Like, I'm here. You have me dedicated to listen to you, to whatever you want to tell me about what's going on here in the company." And what I found a lot of times, there was stress that I wasn't even aware of. And it was actually me telling people to not work as much. Like, "Hey, I didn't ask you to do that."
Right.
And they're like, "Oh shit, you're right." And I'm like, and it's okay. Like, seriously, I saw your Slack online thing on it, 1 a.m. when I was working. And they say, "Well, I saw you working, so I wanted to make sure if you had a question for it." I'm like, "That's appreciate it, but that's your decision, right?"
Right.
I mean, and I tell them, anything, just because I'm working late, if I send you an email or I send you a Slack or you're on vacation, my expectation is that you'll respond to it the next business day during working hours. I'm just getting it off my chest and into your queue, so I don't forget about it. So
totally, yeah,
100%. Funny how they turn out to be mostly slow down. That's too much, and I'd rather you not be burned out, because I didn't plan the company operations around everybody being burned out.
Right, exactly. And I think it's interesting, when we first started doing huddle meetings years ago, it was, what are you doing? What'd you get done? What are you stuck on? Kind of those 3 core tenets. And over time, like, we don't need to address that every day. Like, we have a project management system. Everybody knows what they're doing. Everybody knows what got done. Like, we don't need to talk about that every day. And it really, especially with a remote culture, becomes more about how are you going to connect with people, So this whole, what's on your mind, I'm available to you, but also, what can this team learn about each other and talk about, and what's going on in your life, and, how was the pool today, Danielle? And, those kinds of things, because not everybody is in an office having those conversations about the water cooler like they used to. And so now this kind of becomes the place, where some of that can happen. You and I were talking earlier about how difficult that can sometimes be. Zoom doesn't really set itself up for these like super casual conversations, but I do think it's better than not having them.
Of course. Yeah.
Right. I think people want to connect with people. Right. I mean, at the end of the day, what is life all about? I don't have all the answers. I'm not going to profess to that, but I think a big part of it is human connection. Right. And it's these relationships and developing relationships with people. And, so the more opportunities, you can give people to do that, I think good comes from that, as opposed to reducing those opportunities.
I'd agree.
So you've had a, how long ago did you did at any point when you started your firm and got into business for yourself, were you ever like, everybody's got to be in the office at 9:00, we work until 5, regimented, all that kind of thing? Did you shift, or have you always operated with this kind of mindset?
Well, so when I started in business, I was working with my former business partner, right? Now he came from, Price Waterhouse, New York City. So you can imagine, very strict, very regimented, very much by the book. You got to account for every 6 minutes. And so, he and I worked together for 20 years or so. And I didn't really come from that mindset. I mean, I don't know where I came from, right? I don't even know exactly where it all developed from, but even having worked with him, like, I didn't want to be managed that way when I was an employee. Right. I just wanted to get the work done, and I knew he could count on me to get the work done. So, do you really care whether I do it at 8:00 at night or 3 p.m?
Or whether I'm wearing a suit or a polo?
I'm just going to get the work done, And I think because he could count on me to do that, he laid off of me, right?
Okay.
But it was a thing that we struggled with, for many, many years. Even up into the time that I left and started my own firm, tax season was, if you weren't there on a Saturday in the office doing work, then you must not be doing anything.
Right.
You're mailing it in.
And that was just 4 years ago. Like, we definitely had all of the remote capabilities at that point. Right. And in our firm, like, nobody comes in on a Saturday ever.
Right.
It doesn't matter what time of the year it is. they just get it done. And they may be doing it on a Saturday. I don't know. It just gets done. And I think I read Drive, the Daniel Pink book that he published probably 20 years ago. And he talked about autonomy, mastery, and purpose, like those three things being the things that kind of drive a culture. And, I think that was something I adopted. And I found it to be good,
Right.
I've read a lot of other books that weren't so good and didn't adopt well. But I think that those three concepts, that really helps people tie into it.
Do you feel like your employees are more productive?
I definitely think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, without a doubt. Yeah. I mean, and I think they're happier. I think they feel appreciated. I think they, like one of the changes that I've made when we were making that decision to go to South Africa was for the client relationships to not just be with me. Like, because back then it was like, I had the relationship, you did the work.
You were the tent pole.
Yeah. And so you had people in a room just like cranking out tax returns. And the reality is that what's fulfilling about being in this business is having conversations with clients and understanding what it is that they're going through and what are they trying to build and where are they going. And, you're not doing an IPO. Okay. All right. So, what does that mean in terms of the way that we work with you? So you got to have that understanding. And that's where it goes back to that human connection, developing relationships. It's all about relationships. And so, when you're a partner in a CPA firm, there's a risk involved in that. Right. And the risk is that your client falls in love with the team member more than they did with you. But to me, that felt like a really good risk to take,
Right.
And especially if I have great team members, I hope you fall in love with them, it's going to all be good if that happens.
Yeah. One of the things that I stress is like work hard, play hard. And, but then I expand on it and I say, what I mean is like, there will be a time when I call you and I say, I need you to work all night tonight, right? Systems are down. Something's happened, right? Things happen in IT, especially with, operations of IT, especially when you're doing releases all the time. And so I've seen more productivity by making sure everybody's working reasonable hours at their own pace when we're not in an emergency situation, so that when the emergency arises, everyone's fresh. They know that it's short-lived. It's not going to be like this tomorrow night and the night after that because it's been like that the last 5 nights, kind of a thing too.
Yeah.
So I think it's okay to call on people when the time comes and set the expectation that there may be a time. And I have a feeling that even without saying this, you could call the team and say, I need everybody here on Sunday at 1. It's important. And they probably wouldn't even ask the question.
That's right. I think that's probably true. We are in a business where everything that we deal with already happened.
Right.
So, I have had clients in the past, like call me or leave me a voicemail, Ben, I've got an accounting emergency. Like, I don't think that you do.
That's impossible.
Like, there's no way.
I have one right now, actually.
But you really don't. Like, it's still accounting. Like, it's gonna.
It's a record.
It's gonna be okay.
They changed the math overnight. Everything's wrong.
It's not an emergency in the same way that an IT system going down is an emergency.
I understand.
Right. It doesn't have the urgency to it.
Right.
And so it's definitely a different world. One thing that we did that I think really put the power in the hands of our team has to do with the way that we handle compensation. So
Okay.
I had 20 years of sitting in a room and saying, David, you had a really good year this year, and as a result, I think we've decided we're going to pay you $87,000. And David came into the room thinking that the number was going to be $90,000.
187.
Yeah. We're usually not that far apart.
At least.
But usually there's a difference. There's a gap.
Yeah.
Right? And it's this super awkward conversation. Every employer knows what I'm talking about because you've all had it.
Everybody has it. Yeah.
That's right. And it's a terrible conversation. And
We actually decided this year to not do performance reviews the same way next year because they're not fun for anybody.
They're not. They're terrible. Right?
Yeah.
So I basically built a framework where you just decide what you want to get paid. So you tell me what you want to make.
You hiring?
And I'll tell you
Right.
what you need to generate in revenue. Right?
Yeah.
It's that simple, right? Because that's how it was being factored on the other side.
Right.
I would look at your billings and say, oh, you did this, therefore you're going to make this.
Yeah.
And they were like, I really want to, a couple $1,000s more. Well, I don't want to have that type of a terrible experience over a couple $1,000.
Right.
I tell John every year I want to pay him $1 million
That's right.
because if I do and I can, that means he's made $5 million for me.
That's right.
Like,
Exactly.
And I'm
this is
okay with that.
This is an easy conversation with salespeople.
Right. Well, it's an easy conversation with what we do because it's
Mm-hmm.
all measurable. It's all and I tell you what, our team absolutely loves it. Loves it. You know, I mean, in those conversations, the compensation part of the performance review is like this long. You know, it's like 6 minutes long.
So has anyone ever asked you for something that you didn't feel that they were valued at, or did you tell them the algorithm or the computation?
I had a guy come to me last year, and he proposed a number that was a lot higher than the prior year. Right.
Okay.
I mean, this is a raise that no employer would just be like, you know,
Okay.
I've decided to give you a 30% raise.
Okay.
Right. But he came to me and he said, I think this is the number. And I said, okay. You know, I'm thinking about it from what you said earlier. Like, I don't want it to put so much pressure on you that you feel like you're failing at this.
Right.
Right. Because I'll pay you that, but I also expect that you're going to hit these numbers. Right. And so that's going to be a lot more. You want to get paid 30% more, you're going to do 30% more.
Right.
So, you know, that was the conversation. Are you comfortable with making that much money? You know, knowing what responsibilities you're taking on to do that.
Yep.
And he walked me through it. He had thought it all through. Like, he knew what his plan was. He knew how he was going to get there and get to those numbers, and he felt comfortable with it. And I said, great, let's do it. You know, so
Awesome.
we're in the middle of it right now. I mean, if we weren't canceling the podcast, I'll tell you how it would work out.
Maybe that demand will come back
That's
between
right.
now and then.
So you got some notes. You've got notes here.
Well, you know,
in front of you.
Well, I've hit a lot of these.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like the work-life integration, a key piece of that is who you work for.
For
right?
sure.
It has to be.
Yeah, yeah.
Unless you work for yourself, then it's who are your clients and what arrangements do you have with them,
Right.
you know?
And I think that term, the work-life integration, maybe we should just have it replace work-life balance. You know, then we're not fighting this fight.
7 people now know about it.
By tomorrow, it could
25.
be, it could be 25 or 30.
I don't know.
Yeah. You guys need to go out and tell everybody about work-life integration, whoever's listening right now.
I'm good with that.
Everybody share it with 3 people.
We can get it to
Kaylee
trend.
will make a meme that we can all
Maybe
repost.
we'll start like our own multi-level marketing company and sell work-life integration.
I've never experienced the MLM company that I didn't love.
Sorry, I was thinking back to a time where
How many of us have worked for one and didn't realize it when we started working for it, but realized it later?
I can't.
It would have had to be the 90s, and you would have had to have been a teenager, I think.
Yeah, I don't think so. I did the water purifiers for a little while before I went into the military, but I kind of knew
You know
what
what's
I was getting into.
You
there.
know what's a hot industry I found out this morning?
What's that?
Land surveying.
Really?
How long do you think it takes to get a piece of land surveyed?
Oh, it's like 30 or 45 days right now.
Yeah, it's like 8 weeks, 6
Yeah.
to 8 weeks.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know, one of our customers, that's all they specialize in is staffing for land surveyors.
Well,
They need to get going.
that doesn't do me any good up here.
I'm just saying, they got one guy.
Actually, I'll tell you. So I've worked with a lot of multi-level marketing companies, lots,
Okay.
and not as a distributor,
I
as
understand.
a CPA.
Sure.
And,
Hold on, but did you have to consume the product to get the business?
I have consumed lots of products. Yeah, lots
Yeah.
of weird stuff.
Yeah.
Potions, powders, you know, you
Acai
name it.
berry based
Yeah, all that.
elixirs.
Actually,
yes.
did a lot of work for that
you
company.
don't look 70.
Yeah.
I mean, you're the best looking 70-year-old I know.
You and I both.
Is that right?
Yeah.
So the thing that I loved about the people in those companies, not necessarily all the top earners or whatever, but the core group of people, is from a work-life integration perspective, they were doing it.
They had it. Yeah.
I asked this one lady, I said, I see you at all these meetings, you know, and you're having more fun than anybody, you know, but I don't see you in the top earner thing. And she was like, look, I'm not doing this for the money. You know, I just love these people. And it comes back to that thing we were talking about before, the relationship thing. It was like, I love coming here. This is my family. You know, I like being part of this thing. I make enough money to make it worthwhile, you know, and that's what did it for. And then there's other people who do want more out of it. And the thing that I liked about those people is that they wanted more out of life and they were willing to do something about it. Like, I've met way more people who want more out of life and aren't willing to do anything about it. Right. So there's at least this group of people who wants to do something about it.
I think that's an epidemic. I mean,
Could be.
I really do. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, I've had kids out of college ask me to find them a job making $60,000 a year while they travel the country. I'm like, what do you know how to do? They're like, I mean, nothing. That was the answer. Like, oh,
Okay.
we've reached what's called
An
a
impasse.
a miracle. Or
You're looking for the unicorn job.
yeah, there's no miracles, no black holes, just
Yeah.
everything in between.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, exactly.
You just have to start. Like if you're going to do it, you have to start, right? Like
Yeah.
that's the hardest part. And is taking that first step and making the decision to say, okay, I'm going to do it differently. Like you said, you talked to the dude at VistaCon, you set up your home office, and that was kind of the line in the sand. And after that, you never drove back to Jacksonville for work, right?
Yeah.
But I imagine that having that conversation and taking that risk was somewhat uncomfortable at the time. I mean, I know you're a smart guy, so there's, plenty of demand for smart IT dudes,
I knew I was going to have another job.
Right.
And and I was lucky. I mean, I had one probably before I got home that day.
Right.
I did. I called one person.
I believe it.
And they said, yeah, see you tomorrow. I mean, and it wasn't like that fast. Like I went over tomorrow. I gave my 2 weeks notice, but
Because you're a professional.
I am a professional. But you said something earlier about like you had the ability to do that, like when you decided to do the van.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of that has to do with your maturity, how long you've been working, your knowledge. Over time, people accumulate things, they get into a better position. Like an 18-year-old can't probably do that under, let's call them average circumstances. But I want to tie that back into what John's saying is like, you have to work. And like you have to start, and sometimes you have to have crap jobs because you're in a situation where you have to have a crap job because food is good, right?
Electricity is
is good. Heat, air. So, I mean, I just want to make sure everyone listening knows that we're not saying that like, yeah, graduate from high school and like throw down and be like, here's how it's going to be.
I'm glad you're bringing that up, right? Because certainly at 47, I've built a life that allows me
70
to 70 that allows me to make a decision like that. But at 18, you're in a position to like, you're going to go and you're going to study in college, let's just say, right?
Yep.
So, I mean, you could choose to study by yourself. You could choose to study with people, right? If you study with people, there's a bit more integration, right? Now you're incorporating friends into this work. Right. You could study with people in maybe a funner place like a coffee shop as opposed to the library. You're probably still going to absorb the same information, maybe a little less, but you'll have way more fun doing it with people who you like. Right. And so I think it's like these little decisions that you can make based on what your value system is. What are the things that you value in your life, that then lead to much more integration in what you're doing. And you don't have to go buy a bus and renovate it and drive across the country. You can do that another time. Or later on down the road. Although there are a group of people, you're familiar with the FIRE movement?
I'm not.
The Financially Independent Retire Early movement.
Yes.
Okay.
Right?
Yes.
So, I mean, this is a group of young people who, get to working age and decide they're going to save 80% of their money. They're going to live in a van in their sister's driveway. They're going to save and save and save. And
Take on zero debt.
No debt.
Yep.
And they're going to invest in real estate or other passive forms of, assets. And, by the time they're 30, they're pretty much done, But what's interesting about that.
I love that, by the way.
Well, I like it too, because then it gives you the freedom to do the things that you want to do and not feel like you're like beholden to the man, and that sort of thing. You don't have to do a thing that you have to do. You can start doing the things that you want to do, which is probably still going to involve work in some way, but now you can kind of have a little more fun doing it. And I can also see the counter argument to that, which is, the trade-offs of, hey, this is your 20s, what did you give up in your 20s,
right?
To be able to do that, right? So part of me says, it goes back to that first part of the conversation, the person who just did nothing but work was an idiot. Well, you've just done that for, the first decade in your 20s. There's a lot of things that you can do in your 20s that you cannot do in your 40s and 60s and whatnot. And so maybe a little bit more integration, during that period of time isn't necessarily a bad thing. But it's interesting that there are people at that age group that are doing it.
And if your mindset is that you're going to have a mortgage and a car payment your whole life, and that you're going to work a job that you don't like your whole life because that's what you're going to do, that is what you're going to do. So I like, more so than the implementation of it, is the mentality.
Yeah.
To borrow from our good friend who knows nothing about any of us personally, Dave Ramsey. his whole mantra is live like no one else so that you can live like no one else. And it's kind of the same thing. Like if you're in your 20s and 30s, not accumulating credit card debt and saving your money, compound interest is your friend, not your enemy at that point, because you're getting it instead of giving it.
Big time.
So I love that whole mindset.
Yeah.
And I'm biased on the trade-off of what you do in your 20s versus your 30s versus your 40s. I was in my 20s, I was often, maybe jealous isn't the right word, but like questioning what I was doing because I was working, and I went right into a field that was very demanding. And I had other friends who, you know, were traveling, going around the world, just seeing all these things, you know. But now in my 40s, I could go around the world and travel and see a bunch of things. And I think I could do so more comfortably than I could have done in my 20s.
Sure.
When they were borrowing money from their parents to do so, right? Yeah. Or, you know, when you come back, you haven't lost 5 years off the beginning of your career, and it's even harder to get your foot in the door. Granted, that thing that I just described right there has also changed, you know, in 25 years, the getting your foot in the door. And well, what have you been, you know, the straight-laced interviewer. So what have you been doing with your life for the past 5 years? You know, you hippie traveling around Europe, gaining culture and insight into other worldly affairs.
Right.
You can't work here.
What were you thinking?
You're worthless. So
yeah, that's been a positive change.
Yep.
Yeah,
I agree. And we were kind of talking last week about the, you know, bosses that asked us to pick up laundry, wash cars, right? Babysit, like you name it.
Infringing.
Yeah. Infringing upon your life. And it was just like, oh yeah, this is work. The fact that that's not that way anymore. Yeah. And we hope the pendulum doesn't swing too far in the other direction, where we have, you know, people not working and expecting to be getting, you know, compensated as if they were. But yeah, change is good in a lot of these areas, and the work-life integration is a great way to describe what I think should be the goal.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. But, no, that's definitely what I'm pushing for. You know, we're trying to build that culture. We're trying to work with clients to help build that culture. I mean, I think you made that point earlier. You know, it has to exist at the top. You know, it has to be the value of the employer, you know, before the people working there can actually adopt it. And I think as more and more people wake up to that possibility, you know, then employers are kind of going to get forced into it. Yeah. And I don't think it's a bad thing. You know, obviously, I think it's a good thing.
You said something earlier. You were talking about shedding things that don't give you joy or value. How often do you assess stuff that's going on in your life? Like, is it a daily kind of checklist you run through? Is it weekly, quarterly? Like, how often do you kind of assess what's going on and make decisions?
And before you answer that, I had a question about how does Rolf do it, and how did he teach it?
Oh,
like,
great question.
With all those things. So maybe it's a combined answer.
Maybe.
Yeah, it's and I did get it from Rolf, right? And Rolf does it once a year. You know, and I think he does it once a year intentionally, right? So it's like he and his wife go away. They've done it for 20 years. You know, they do this thing every year, and they go through the process. You know, and we typically travel around Christmas time, and during that trip every year, I'm definitely going through this, like looking back over this past year, what served me, what didn't serve me, you know, what am I going to focus on this coming year? What am I going to shed? And so I think there is a time of the year that I do that intentionally. I think there are things that happen throughout the year where it just becomes apparent that this is the thing that I need to shed. Yeah. And then sometimes there's like catalyst events, you know, where a thing happens and it's like, okay, well, I'm just not doing that anymore. You know, like, you know, I'm glad that thing happened, because now I don't have to deal with that anymore. Yeah. You know, email actually was one for me. You know, where there wasn't a catalyst for that, and it wasn't an annual thing. It was just at some point in time during the year, I woke up and I was like, this is insane. You know, there's 400 emails a day. I can't go through these. I'm getting nothing done other than getting rid of junk mail. I don't know which one to it takes me as long to get rid of the junk mail as it does to actually figure out what I need to reply to.
You got to read part of it before you delete it.
I can't prioritize it. It's like it's just consuming and it's depressing and I hate it. And you know, I hired somebody at that point to, like, I said, look, here's all my email accounts. It's easy to tell what's junk. Get rid of all that stuff. You know, here's how you can figure out what I need to deal with, and here's how you can figure out what other people in my organization need to deal with.
Yep.
And whatever I need to deal with, put in this folder, and I'll deal with those.
Okay.
You know,
Nice.
and so, you know, there's 20 a day that I need to deal with instead of 300.
That's manageable.
I can do that
We
most of the time.
We were on a Zoom meeting one time, and Dave saw my inbox, and I think it traumatized him.
Are
Seriously.
you one of those people who doesn't mark
I don't
messages?
delete anything.
You don't delete
I don't
I was
delete
on a
anything.
call. I was Zooming with Jimmy yesterday. He has 22,383 unread messages in his inbox. This is the guy who taught me the concept of folder organization in email. Like, I didn't even know you could create a folder in Outlook, you know, in 1996. And he was like, hey, man, check this out. You right click, and then the thing spins for 10 seconds, and you pick new folder.
And then he gave up on it.
I guess he gave up on it. I don't,
Yeah, I have. Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a type of person, right?
Yeah.
When their phone pops open and you see they have like 3,000 unread text messages, you're like, how do you even know when I text you? You know,
Yeah.
it's like
They don't.
they don't. Yeah, it's
I have,
pretty wild.
Yeah. If I have a badge on mine, it's anxiety. Like, I got to see, you know, just get rid of it.
Nice.
Yeah.
See, you guys are different in that way.
Oh, Dave and I differ in a lot of ways. I know that's shocking, but
This is why I remind him of all the things that he hasn't done yet.
Yes.
Because he's talking to people, which I don't want to do. Yeah, it works out good.
yeah, no, it's a good balance. That's funny. That's really funny. I'm fixating on my email. I've got 19,000 email messages.
Jimmy's way better than you.
Oh yeah.
See if you can knock that out by this afternoon. Just click Control A.
Yeah,
And then mark all as read.
absolutely.
Done.
It's a good way to do it.
That's how I handle Discord, because
Yeah.
I log into it like once a week for one specific conversation, and then there's just all these unread conversations that I know they have nothing to do with me. So
Yeah.
just delete them.
What have
Mark them as read.
now that we've been talking about shedding,
Mm-hmm.
can you recall a thing that you shed?
Oh yeah, I shed Xero. I'm in the process of shedding Xero, Xero, the accounting software. We all know about this.
Yeah.
We're all working on it.
Yeah.
We shed sales and marketing at the company.
You did?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Had our best year ever.
Without it.
So it's kind of like you said, like, how do you explain that?
Right.
Seriously, I don't know.
Well,
Yeah, I got out of the offering free coaching and interview prep and all that stuff on LinkedIn because I was getting nothing out of that. People
Getting
were just
nothing
taking advantage
just
of my
had
time.
to shed it.
Yeah.
We're shedding our Essentials project that we started about 5 years ago, the pay-as-you-go service.
Mm-hmm.
Just not worth it.
Not making sense.
Not worth it.
Yeah.
It's a lot. It's a lot.
It's
like
a little
that.
bit of revenue, but it's not worth all of the headaches and the overhead and all
Right.
that stuff. And John can close one deal and then make more than that whole product line brings in 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
So it's a
So
no-brainer.
why mess with it? It's like that book you had me read a couple of years ago. Essentialism. Was that what it was?
I think it was.
I think it was. Yeah. Where
The Art of Saying No.
The art of saying no.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like anything that doesn't make sense or contribute to the overall mission or, to go back to the Marie Kondo thing, if it doesn't bring you joy, let it go. Just so you know, her whole thing is like cleaning out your house.
Yeah.
Like that was her jam. This is how you get rid of everything in your house and have a nice, clean environment. Anything that doesn't give you joy must go.
Are you? Does your house resemble your inbox?
Zero chance. No, my wife.
It's not his. It's only half his.
Yeah, no, my wife. There are certain spots in the house that are mine, and you can tell they're mine. Like I got a box of cables, right? Like
You're
don't
going to
even-
need those one day.
Maybe I don't know. Maybe I know I got like an old Western like external storage drive from 1998.
It was
I don't-
$300.
It was.
You can't just throw it away.
It's like 50 gigs, Dave. I don't know what's on it. I don't know where the power brick is. I don't even know if I could turn it on. But yeah, I still have it.
Yeah.
This is so it leads into this conversation of sunk costs, right? So the sunk cost. You already spent the money.
Yeah.
If it's not providing you any fulfillment now, let's move on. I remember we went on a trip once, and I can't remember exactly where we went, but wherever we were, we had spent a lot of money to be there.
Okay.
And the kids were not having a good time.
Okay.
And I remember saying to my wife, like, well, then let's go. Like,
Yeah.
I'm out. I mean, if the kids aren't having
Let's dip.
fun, if this is miserable, then but we spent $1,200 to be here, or whatever the number was,
Yep.
And I'm like, babe, whether we have a good time or not,
Yeah.
we spent $1,200.
Not getting a refund.
Yeah, no. And this does not look like it's going to get any more fun based on what I'm seeing right now. So let's just go back to the hotel and hang at the pool.
We took our daughter to Disney World when she was like 6, and my brother recommended this place to stay, and it was not as he described, and it was definitely not up to the standards of what we really wanted to stay in on our vacation.
Yeah.
And so we went one day. That night, we were sitting there. Neither one of us could sleep because the bed was so bad. Like the mini fridge was going, and like there's just noises, and like we looked at each other and like, you ready to go? Like, yep. And we packed up the car at 1 a.m. and we were back in our
awesome.
house 2.5 hours later.
I've done that.
And it was best thing we could have done.
Yeah. I went camping. Some friends of ours invited me and my son to go camping somewhere down near Melbourne. And we got down there and we set up the tent, and we were, in the tent, and the sand gnats came out.
Oh, dude.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. It was so brutal. And there was no way to get away from them. Like the only place you could be was in the car.
Right.
And I remember like we went and jumped in the car, and I'm like, dang,
Let's
the car.
go.
We're in the car.
I got the keys.
I'm out. You want to go to the Space Center? Let's go there.
Let's
that seems like
go.
more fun. We literally left the tent and everything in it behind. Like,
Did you really?
I couldn't deal
Come
with
back
the
later
sand
for
gnats
it.
anymore.
Yeah. Come back later.
My friends. Yeah, it was like pre-cell phone days. They had no idea what happened to us. Like we
Yeah.
set up the tent and then just disappeared.
That's fantastic.
That's pretty bad.
Actually.
There could have been a search party called.
I know. But they weren't there. They were surfing. I don't surf.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
true.
Yeah. What am I going to do?
Right on.
Yeah, I like shed my flip flops before after I got out of like a really bad place that was really dirty, like a hospital emergency room on a Saturday night. I'm like, I'm not putting these things back in my car. I just left them in the parking lot. Technically littering, I'm sorry, but like I've picked up my share of trash over the years.
You're such a scofflaw. You're an outlaw, Dave. I don't even know what to say to you. My goodness.
I like the shedding stuff, and it's kind of like refreshing. I spent the last 4 or 5 weeks cleaning out the garage of the house because I just hadn't had time to do it in so long.
It took you 5 weeks?
I did
What
it,
did you have in there?
not much.
Oh.
But what I did is I didn't kill myself doing it all in one day.
Oh, okay.
I did like 2 hours on a Saturday, an hour on a Sunday, and taking stuff out to the street, a little bit at a time,
It's a classic dad
getting rid of
move.
stuff.
Cleaning out the garage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
I love it.
I love the way it looks now. Because I can walk around, I don't have to open a garage door to get from one side of the garage to the other. And, but it's kind of liberating taking something that you look at and you say, and this is an analog to something you do for a living or something that you hold on to at work, but what is this object? I don't know when I got it. I don't know why I got it. Why is it in my garage? Is it even mine?
Yeah.
The answer to all those questions is throw it away, right? Like get rid of it.
Give it
because
away, throw it away.
All it's doing is like tripping you.
Yeah.
Like it's going to cause medical bills.
Well, and there's the whole mentality, that maybe came out of like the Great Depression era or whatever, that you have to like conserve, and if you have it, hold on to it. And
Yeah.
And I remember my grandmother like reusing tinfoil, so many times, and that's just that was their life back then. And now, to throw something away, you feel guilty about it. I'm filling up the landfill with this thing, but man, there's just so much stuff that I don't need.
Yep.
My
It's not your fault. You
It's
have
sunk.
it. It came.
It's sunk.
It came with your meal,
Yeah,
right?
my
move it along.
my 16-year-old two chins was going through the cable box, as I call it,
Yeah.
looking for USB cables, and he pulls out the big monster cables. Remember those?
Yeah.
Mhm,
Oh, yeah. And he goes, "What are these for? Like, what do these even go to?" And I'm like, "Those are TV cables." And he's like, no, man, they're not. This is an HDMI cable. This is what we use for TV, Dad. Like, this has to go. And yeah, Jenny Lou hopped on that bandwagon. And I don't have those cables anymore.
No.
Not all of them.
See, the monster cable is what you run from the battery directly to the amplifier, which feeds the two 18-inch subwoofers in the trunk.
I don't.
So that you can terrorize the neighbors.
I don't have any of that, and I'm not going to enable Two Chins to do that either. That's just not ever going to happen.
I think I know what I'm going to get Two Chins for a graduation present. I think I'm going to take the Benz to the audio place.
Yeah.
And just have them drop in a system.
Yeah, and I'll have them swing by every Saturday night around 11:30.
He wouldn't
Thank
do that.
you.
He wouldn't do that to me.
No, he wouldn't. You're right. You wouldn't do that at all. Anyway.
At least you'll know when he gets home.
Yes. Yeah. Because my dogs certainly don't let me know when he gets home. Yeah.
All right. Well, we're over an hour.
We made it.
Ben, do you have anything else you want to cover while you're here?
Man, this has been great. I appreciate you guys having me on. It's been fun. It's always fun.
It is always fun, and I always enjoy talking to all you guys, and we'll probably do it again
at some point.
Yeah.
Spontaneously.
But I just want to mention one thing before we go. On Tuesday afternoon at about 9 p.m. Eastern Time, 6 p.m. Vancouver time, a Russian IL-76 cargo jet carrying 300 dogs and cats from Kabul, Afghanistan, landed in Vancouver. And this is the KSAR project that we talked about a couple of weeks ago. Mm-hmm. They raised the money. They got the plane. They did all the logistics to say that this plane had any extra capacity after they packed it full of animals would not be accurate. The people riding in the plane were sleeping on top of the crates when not checking on the dogs. There were aisles and rows in between the animals to make sure everybody was taken care of. They went from Kabul to Ankara, Turkey.
Yeah.
Ankara, Turkey. Stayed there for about 24 hours. Flew from Ankara 7 hours to Reykjavik, Iceland. And then laid over there for about 12 hours and then flew 8 hours from Reykjavik to Vancouver. So about 60 hours from departure from Kabul to arrival in Vancouver, where a team of 150 volunteers, I don't know if they were all there that night, but they had that many people signed up. They built a kennel out of a helicopter rental facility there at the airport. So they literally took the animals off of the plane. You got to see them ride down the conveyor belt. They took them right into the facility, made sure they were okay, put them in their kennels, fed them, all of this stuff. SPCA International was the one who coordinated that. And I just wanted to say to all those people, job well done.
Right. You
did what governments and bureaucracy could not do with an infinitely larger amount of money at their disposal.
Remarkable.
And great job. So
thousands of people.
I hope it's a regular thing. The rescue where the 300 animals came from, it has about 150 left, and they're already working on getting the next kind of plan to get the animals out of Kabul. And there was one guy on the ground there, and you can watch these videos. I think most of them are on the SPCA International site, but a guy that worked at the American Embassy and had to leave his cat behind in June of 2020 was waiting at the airport Tuesday night and got reunited with his animal.
Dang.
So
that is amazing.
Great. I'm not crying. You're crying.
It's a great story.
That stuff always makes me cry.
Are you crying, dude?
No, I'm not crying. Right, you're crying.
All right. That's all we have. We are signing off forever. So goodbye.
Bye.
Adios.
Happy recruiting.
You're listening to RecruiterCast Live. Thanks for listening to RecruiterCast Live with your host, Dave Webb. Make sure to follow RecruiterCast on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Instagram at RecruiterCast. Check out RecruiterCast on all major podcast platforms.